Over the past year or so, I've been somewhat obsessed with a YouTube channel called Caleb Hammer and his financial audit videos. This is one of the only channels where I've watched perhaps every video on the channel, and I always watch the new videos as soon as they upload, because I have a morbid fascination with the financial audit format. As a personality and as a show, it works pretty well. He's good at what he does, but bringing people on who are in debt, who are struggling financially, and analysing their purchases and their behaviour, it is just very interesting to see how people live, broken down into an objective, granular, itemised list of things they've spent money on. These days, almost all purchases are done electronically, so there's no hiding from this sort of analysis. It's an objective measure of exactly what purchases were made and where and how much it was.
February, we were in Disneyland.
Jobless in Disneyland?
No, we were on vacation.
Yeah, we went on vacation.
Well, I buy a lot of Pokemon cards.
What is Game Guys?
It's like a game store. They sell Pokemon cards. They sell Funko Pops.
Trend. She's on every trend. Oh, Funko fucking Pops here.
I can go there to play Pokemon tournaments.
My computer is very nice, by the way.
Yeah, and your son uses it to play Sesame Street.
Wendy's. Getting lunch and breakfast. Dunkin' Donuts. Caribbean Fire. Ramen Lab Eatery. Taco Bell, lunch and breakfast, Chipotle, McDonald's, Papa John's, McDonald's, Carlin's Handcraft. Oh, wait, we're going to McDonald's, Marshall's, Ross Store, Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy's, lunch and dinner, or lunch and breakfast and lunch, Einstein's Bros, lunch and dinner. It's all f*** you bullshit. Why have we accumulated all this?
Well, I don't know, I've had a lot of make myself feel better spending.
That is what's going to happen. Bring in $3,000. You'll spend $3,500.
I mean, I hope not. I'm trying to be better.
Not trying to be better. What do you mean? I have your most recent month. You spend more than you brought in. What the f*** are you talking about? I'm trying. There is no trying. I'm trying to budget. Who's trying to budget? You budget or you don't?
I guess I don't budget, but I would like to.
Then why don't you?
Because I'm lazy and stupid.
That's a bullshit answer. Come on. Pull deep inside. Why are you not sitting down and putting in the actual work?
I don't know. I don't.
It's similar in a lot of ways to TV shows like My 600 Pound Life or other TV shows about extremely obese people who have difficulty controlling how much they eat. They know that they're gaining a lot of weight or that they are an unhealthy weight. They're unable to control the behavior patterns that's causing them to be unhealthy. And there's a really interesting contradiction in human psychology where you have the person who is talking to you, who is thinking, who believes they're in control of themselves, and then the person who is doing the actions and the behaviors and the bad habits that just stack up over time to have these terrible consequences for people's lives.
A good portion of Americans are barely making it by.
Yeah, and this is your choice. You're getting DoorDash Panda Express. F*** you. You're not barely making it by because of the system. In fact, the system's only supporting you thanks to my taxes. You're welcome. A little confused. You're going to use the system as an excuse? This is what it's like for every American. Dude, you're getting DoorDash, spending $10,000 more than you make, putting everything on your grandma, and you say YOLO. F*** you. That's you.
I mean, it'll all work out.
No. There have been people that lose their house. There have been people that lose their cars. There are people that go through bankruptcy many times. There are people who die in poverty. That is incorrect. What the f*** are you talking about?
I mean, I'll slowly be chipping away at it.
Says who? Says when?
There's just adjustment periods where you have to keep trying.
Where's your adjustment?
Shift things around a little.
Personally, I've never been bad with money. I've never been in debt, other than sort of student loans and mortgages. Not because I'm a particularly virtuous, self-controlled person, but just because I don't get that much pleasure from buying things. And similarly, I'm not an extremely obese person because my appetite is just normal. I don't want to consume more food than I need, so I've never had a problem with gaining weight. But I do understand what it's like to have your impulses be at odds with your long-term rational desires. The way that you want to be, the way that you want your life to be, is often at odds with the things you want moment to moment. In my personal experience, the biggest example of this was probably when I was at university and when I was doing exams at school. I would find it really hard to make myself prepare for exams, to focus, to read. It was a real struggle. If I could only focus and study and revise for just a few hours every day for a few weeks, I knew that it would make a huge difference to my exams, and yet I could not force myself to do it. So I know what it's like to know that you should be doing something and to still not do it, or to know that you should not do something and to still do it. But that contradiction in human psychology has always been really interesting to me. I think it's something that isn't well understood enough. Books like The Power of Habit, I think the other one is Atomic Habits, they draw attention to this quirk of human psychology that has so much implications over our entire lives. These are really popular books, and yet still, I think the understanding of humans as rational decision makers is still widely held, and I think it's doing a lot of damage in the way that we plan society, the way we think about people's behaviours, is that we assume that people know what they're doing and that they're doing it on purpose, and that they are capable of making decisions that are in their own best interest, when really those things do happen, and human behaviour isn't completely random or completely instantaneous in the way that an animal's behaviour is, but it's still a long way off that optimal, rational, Vulcan way of thinking about the world. And I think the thing that is the hardest to make people understand in modern society is that the ability to control one's own behaviour for one's own best interest is not uniformly distributed across the population. The ability to live a productive, happy life, to plan one's own life and to make good decisions for oneself and one's family, some people have more of that capacity than others. And there's a temptation to believe that it's just intelligence, that smart people have good jobs, they have good control over their behaviour, and they have a good life as a result. And stupid people don't. They're not good at controlling themselves. They get in trouble, they go to prison because they've committed crimes, or they spend too much money, or they smoke and drink too much. But I don't think it's intelligence. It's not just being clever. I think we all know people in our lives who are very book smart. They clearly have a high intelligence in some ways, and yet they don't have that grit. They don't have that quality of self-control that would really benefit them in their life. If I had to distill it down to one characteristic, I would call it impulse control. And the amount of impulse control that someone has is not a factor of their own choices. We do still treat people as if they are in control of themselves, because that's, what choice do we have? We can't just say, oh, well, they've got low impulse control, so just let them do whatever they want. They don't know any better. Whether it's something that you're born with, or whether it's something that you're raised to sort of cultivate, if you're born into a certain kind of family with a good structured upbringing. It could be genetic, or it could be environment. Probably it's a mix of both of those things. But either way, it's not under your control. And the real tragedy is that the amount of impulse control that you have is probably the biggest determinant of whether you're going to be a productive member of society, whether you're going to have a happy, orderly life or not, become obese or not. It's really important for just interpersonal relationships, like whether you're going to have a good marriage, whether you're going to be a good parent, as well as if you're going to be a good employee, if you're going to be a good neighbour, if you're going to have good friendships. All of these things benefit from having a higher level of impulse control. It's also called time preference in economics. What that means is that when you have a high time preference, then you value the immediate gain or the immediate pain of a situation much more highly than the distant gains or losses that are sort of more theoretical and in the future.
You're choosing Pokemon over moving out, even though you want to move out. It's because, you know why? It's because moving out is a long-term process. Moving out is something where you have to save up, you have to have savings, you should pay off some debt so your minimum monthly payments aren't as intense. You have to put first month, maybe last month, there's certainly a security deposit down. You might have to move and find a new job. Those are things that take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, year maybe. That is a long horizon. Hard thing to look forward to, hard thing to stay down and grind for. Where a Pokemon purchase is like that. You are only able to do those insta things. You cannot see beyond a day. You can't see beyond a day. You wouldn't even bring your phone charger to Austin when you came here last night and stayed in a hotel.
You know, things that are happening to the future you, those aren't as important as what's happening to you right now. People who are able to make decisions that benefit themselves in the future at the expense of themselves in the present they have a higher impulse control, but they also have a lower time preference, and they generally make better decisions for themselves and just better decisions in general. This was famously tested by psychologists with the marshmallow test, where they asked children to restrain themselves from eating a marshmallow with the promise of giving them another marshmallow if they could put off eating this marshmallow that's in front of them for 5 minutes. Then they would get 2, which is obviously better than having 1. And some children could do it and some couldn't, and it depended on age, and it also predicted how successful those children were going to be in the future by this or that metric. Coming back to Caleb Hammer's financial audit and these people who can't control their spending because they don't have the discipline to save their money for a rainy day, to put into an emergency fund or to put into a pension or into a mortgage. They just spend the money that they have, and when they have no more money, they take out credit cards to pay for what they want. And the guests on financial audit, whether they're representative of the average person or not, what you see is that a lot of their income goes towards purchases that are not necessary, or even when they are necessary purchases, like paying for a car, they buy they lease a car that's much more expensive than what they can really afford. But they also, the fascinating thing to me is that they go on much more extravagant holidays than I go on myself. They treat themselves to food and experiences and holidays and cars and these luxuries that I don't allow myself, even though I'm not in debt and I don't. We're doing all right, but we do all right because we know how much money we have, and that's how much we spend, and that's in addition to making some savings and trying to build a good future for our children. It's really quite shocking to see how much money these people spend, considering they have no money. They sometimes earn a good salary. It's not that they have a minimum wage job or something. These people often have a lot of money, but they spend even more than that. There's something interesting about watching it that I enjoy, but then thinking about it from the point of view of how we should order our societies, like what should the law be in terms of taking out this high interest debt, and whether these people should be entitled to state benefits and all sorts of other things. Like, the guests are all American, right? They're not from my country, but whatever country you're in, a lot of modern developed nations, they financially support these people who make very bad financial decisions. Because when these people are forced to retire, they're not going to have any money for their retirement. They're not going to be able to support themselves financially. And they, at that point, become a burden to their family, but also to the state, whatever state benefits that they're entitled to. And they're probably not only going to be poor, they're not going to be earning anything. They'll also probably still have the debt that they accumulated from the holidays that they went on when they were in their 30s and 40s. When it keeps piling up and it never gets paid off, they are not truly financially independent. And coming back to the example of people who are obese because they can't control their diets or they can't force themselves to exercise, they will be a burden to the NHS here in England and in other countries too, where they either subsidise or completely cover the cost of medical treatments, of hospital visits, can be provided by the government if you can't afford to pay for it yourself, or even if you can, you just don't want to pay for it yourself. In that situation, there's now a moral burden that this person's actions have. That is no longer just that they are ruining their own life through ruining their own health through their actions, whether that's eating too much or eating the wrong things or smoking too much. They've now become a burden on other taxpayers. Their actions are having a tangible effect on the country, and although it's a very diffuse effect, it still adds up when you're talking about millions of people. And so then it becomes in the government's interest to implement these paternalistic policies about smoking and about fast food. I've made videos before about how much I hate the sugar tax that we have here in the UK. It's still the case. You can't get any fully sweetened drinks anymore. There's fruit juices which have natural sugars, which they get past the tax, or there's, I think basically Coca-Cola is the only drink that's still available with a full sugar option. Every other drink has been had the amount of sugar in it cut by half, and has become basically completely unappetizing to people like me who have no trouble controlling their health and their weight. I'm very healthy. Other than being 9 months pregnant, I'm a very healthy weight. But I can't have the drink that I want now because of the number of people who are obese in the country. And instead of just letting people be obese or be overweight or to have too much sugar in their diet, we have to implement these policies that cover everyone. What's interesting is that high interest loans and payday loans are not illegal, even though there are a lot of people suffering from the fact that they are able to take out these loans and facilitate their own bad decisions financially. Now, these kinds of loans do have a benefit to some people who, for whatever reason, they have an unexpected payment that they have to make, a car repair, for example, or some kind of emergency that they have to pay for, and they're willing to pay extra in interest in order to make that payment now because it's something immediate that needs to be done. They need the money for something, and they will have money soon, but they don't have it yet. So they're happy to sign up for a high interest loan because they can afford it, because they need it. But I suspect that's not the case in the vast majority of cases. The people who are taking out these high interest loans, they really had the capability to save up some money, but they didn't have the discipline to do that. They didn't save any money. They don't have any savings for these kinds of emergencies. Or their emergency is just that they got to the end of the month and they spent all their money and now they have bills due and they have to take out these loans just to cover the bills. Basically, they want to spend more money than they've earned, and instead of making a few sacrifices to save some money to have that thing later, they can have the thing sooner and then make the sacrifices after the fact and also pay more in interest. And often what happens is that they take out the loan and they make the payments, but those payments leave them in a deficit because they haven't made any of those sacrifices that they would have made if they'd planned properly and been saving a bit at a time. And I really want to make it clear that I'm not talking about poor people. I'm not talking about people on a low income who are doing their best to get by. It could be that a lot of these people don't always make perfect choices, and who does? But it's not that this behavior, this lack of impulse control, is the root of all economic hardship in the world or in my country. There are plenty of other reasons why someone could be living on a low income and struggling financially. And as I've said, a lot of these people who have very disorganized lives and are very bad at taking care of themselves, they do make good income and they're able to display a lot of the signals of being wealthy, but in fact they have no money at all. Another example of this very bad sort of just life planning ability if you want to call it impulse control or whatever it is. The internet became aware a few years ago of a lot of people who seemingly have not replaced the batteries in their smoke detectors or fire alarms in their house for so long that they've got used to the sound of the occasional chirping sound that the alarm makes every 30 seconds. And if you've ever been in a house that has a smoke detector making this noise, you'll know that it's the most piercing, annoying sound imaginable. But these people have lived with it for so long that they've just tuned it out, apparently. But I can think of no worse example of somebody who, for the cost of what is the cost of a D-type battery, the kind of battery that goes in smoke alarms. Admittedly, it's not the most common kind of battery usually, but still, they go shopping, presumably. They have been in a shop occasionally, and they have the ability to just buy a battery and replace it, but they don't. They just don't for months or years of their life. They'll just listen to the sound. In addition to the sound, it's also unsafe, right? The smoke alarm is going to run out of battery, and that puts the house at risk of burning down, but these people have, I guess, more immediate things to worry about than the noise that the device on the ceiling makes every 30 seconds. What is really surprising about this, which is what I keep coming back to, is that these people are not medically retarded. They are not intellectually challenged necessarily. They can have an intelligent conversation. They can hold a comprehensible conversation about their smoke alarm and why it makes the chirping sound and why they have not changed the battery. This is a properly functioning human being who, in most other ways, is somehow able to keep themselves alive. So it just raises the question of whether these kinds of loans need to just be illegal for the sake of people, the very many people who are, for these people who are just getting themselves into the debt for no real good reason and not paying the debt off and just making their lives incrementally worse every time they accumulate more debt. The libertarian argument is that if companies want to give people loans and to charge a lot of interest for those loans, then that's a decision, that's a contract between a company and a person, and even if that person is making bad decisions, then they should be free to do that, because it's a restriction on the freedom of everyone to make that illegal, and people should just be responsible for their own behaviour. Whether that behaviour is good or bad is not anyone's business. They can make bad decisions if they want. That's the libertarian point of view. But the paternalistic point of view is that we already have paternalism. The government already has benefits and bailouts for people who have messed up their lives in a variety of different ways. But once you have that support by the government in place, the government now has a reason to be paternalistic. It's almost as if you've started down that road of paternalism, you have to do more and more in order to just make financial sense, in order to prevent people from making bad choices, bad health choices, bad financial choices. You need to implement these policies to just to save the government money, basically, because they're the ones who have to pay for it later when those choices have bad consequences. But instead we have, as far as I can tell, most countries have gone with a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B approach, where they try a little bit of libertarianism with a little bit of paternalism, and basically the result is lots and lots of spending by the government, and it never goes down, it only ever goes up, because they can't take away the support from people who now rely on it, and they don't want to take away the freedoms of most ordinary people that makes the country worth living in. But that's just some random thoughts that I was having. As usual, don't take me too seriously. Please write a comment if this is something that you've had any thoughts on. Let me know what you think of the video, and if you're also a fan of Caleb Hammer and the Financial Audit, or my £600 life, please let me know. Until next time, goodbye and have a good one. Just wanted to let you know that since filming the video that you just watched, and now when I'm releasing it, I've had another baby. It all went very well. I'm very healthy. If you'd like to send a donation, you can do that using super thanks function, where you can leave a donation with a YouTube comment. I'll also leave links in the description to Ko-Fi or Ko-Fi, which is a great way to send donations without anything being taken by the service itself. Thank you so much for watching the video and for supporting me and my growing family. We're really happy, really appreciate everyone. Even if all you send is your well wishes, and that still helps. So thank you.